Hi, I'm Mike Papantonio, and this is America's Lawyer. Drug companies tried to pressure Twitter into blocking calls for vaccine patents to be waived during the pandemic so emerging countries could actually have a drug to protect themselves. President Biden, well, now his own document scandal, he's got a lot to worry about. It might end up costing him in next year's election if he even runs at all because of it. And a new study's confirmed that those Russian bots that we heard so much about, well, they had no impact, according to a very extensive study, no impact on the 2016 presidential election. All that and more, it's coming up. Don't go anywhere. America's Lawyer starts right now. Drug companies tried desperately to get Twitter to block users who wanted poor countries to have access to the COVID vaccine. Ring of Fire's Farron Cousins joins me to talk about what's happening. This is an ugly story, man. I mean, the 10,000 foot, give it to us. It's every time you hear this story, it's nauseating to think that corporate America operates like this.
Yeah, what happened is you had a lobbyist for Twitter who over in Europe was saying, hey, listen, we're starting to see a lot of people calling for cheap vaccines, calling for waiving the patents so that these poor countries around the world can get the vaccine. Twitter, what we need you to do is we need you to look at and see how these people are violating your terms of service and get these tweets blocked. You had a lot of hashtags, free the vaccine, things like that going around. So you also had lobbyists from the big pharma companies making these vaccines, Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, who jumped on this as well and said, okay, that's a great idea. We're going to start sending Twitter these specific accounts because these people have the audacity to want the world to get vaccinated.
I mean, that's the headline. You had third world countries that said, can't you please share this with us? Because we have people dying by the thousands. And then the companies, I love this statement. Their joint statement is, we take social responsibility seriously. That was their joint statement. How dare you say we did this awful thing? Well, the proof is right there. Now we find out that The Intercept did all this work. Again, it's the same folks. It's Lee Fong with Intercept, great writer, great source of information. And he talks about how these bots were created by the industry. And every time anything would show up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any of them, the bots would go in there and attack. I mean, big numbers of bots would attack. And they would try to give a rationale. So why it's okay for folks in third world countries to die because the American corporation or the European corporation won't share information with them. This story to me is just such an indictment of capitalism. I mean, it is. Capitalism, I think capitalism works, but when you see this kind of stuff, and again, there's no investigation of it. There's no attempt to really understand it. Corporate media won't do a damn thing about it. Corporate media doesn't cover this story. You understand that? Yeah. You will not see this story in corporate media. It'll show up on shows like this. But the truth is, this goes on all the time, doesn't it?
It really does. And what is concerning here, obviously with all of the releases of the Twitter files, we've seen, the partisan stuff come out. We've heard reports of, liberals being silenced, conservatives being silenced. This goes beyond that. This transcends left or right politics. And that is what people need to understand, because that is, as we've talked about for years here on this show, that's the slippery slope. Because if you're okay with it, it's okay if it happens to this people because I'm not this people. It's gonna come eventually, and this is a absolutely horrendous continuation.
This story would have never been told, and Jack Dorsey would have gotten away with this again with all the crap he did to try to censor Twitter. This story never would have come out if Elon Musk had not said, you know what, I'm going to open my files. I want you to see what dirty freaks were running Twitter. The freaks that were running at least my organization, I can show you. Those same things were going on with Facebook and all social media. But had he not done that, we wouldn't know this story.
Well, and also huge credit, as you mentioned, to Lee Fong here, because he had to go searching through this. It was not laid out for him. He had to find all of this specific info, put the pieces together and came up with this remarkable
Do
story.
you think Jack Dorsey would release this
Oh,
information?
hell no.
Yeah. A staffer for George Santos allegedly impersonated Kevin McCarthy's chief of staff to raise money. Okay, headline, it's against the law. You cannot impersonate somebody else and say, hey, I'm with McCarthy, I need your money, send it to me. The guy should be in prison, and the Republicans can't pull themselves to getting rid of the guy. I mean, he is a freak. I mean, he lied about who he is. He lied about his religion. He lied about his education. He lied about where his financing came from. The guy is a total fraud, and they won't pull the trigger on this guy. Pick this story up, though.
It's so disturbing here that, yeah, he paid a staffer for 2 campaigns, 2020 and 2022. Staffer made about $100,000 over the 2 campaigns, and what this staffer did was he impersonated a man by the name of Dan Meyer, who was Kevin McCarthy's chief of staff. He emailed and made phone calls saying, hi, I'm Dan Meyer. I'm with Kevin McCarthy's office. I got this great candidate here in New York, George Santos. He needs some money. What can you do for him? And they said, oh, well, Dan, we love you. You know, we're good friends with McCarthy. So sure, we'll give money to this guy you're pitching because you're putting your faith in him. And the staffer knew this. I refuse to believe that Santos didn't know this was happening.
Oh, he knew it was going on. This is a guy that is being indicted. Where they're at, is it Bolivia?
Brazil.
Brazil, yeah. Okay, so they've got indictments trying to chase him down in Brazil. He comes to the United States, fits into politics perfectly. No question he fits into politics. I try to sometimes sum up, what does it take? What's that mentality of the politician? And I say across the board. I don't know whether it's chicken or the egg, but they're the same kids that used to hide toys in the sandbox and blame it on the other kid when the teacher would say something about it. That's the politician. And so this guy is that much, much worse. The guy is on the edge of criminality. And the Republicans don't have the guts to say, you're out of here, George.
Well, you know what's even creepier about this story? Because like I said, it happened in 2 election cycles. McCarthy's office was made aware of this happening in 2021. So they knew for a year and a half that this guy was doing it, but they were like, well, I guess he's our candidate, so we've got to let it slide. So it's just failures across the board, but it's intentional failures. They knew this, possibly fraud was taking place, and they let it happen because it's one of our own. We're not going to go after our own guy.
Again, it's this whole thing about tribalism. God
is.
Almighty, will we ever abandon it? Our viewers are tribal. Politicians are tribal. We can't understand how difficult it is to make that escape and understand, let's just call balls and strikes. When somebody like Santos comes along, let's get rid of him. When a Trump emerges, let's deal with it then. When we find out the Democrats are doing some of the things we're seeing right now, let's talk about it and say it's not right. Tribalism is killing democracy. The United States has dropped an average of 46 bombs every day for the last 20 years. Now, I don't know. This story showed up in Salon.com. Again, no mention of it in corporate media. Why? Because if you turn on MSNBC or you turn on CNN or Fox News, they're going to be you'll see advertisements by Raytheon, advertisements by the big weapons industry. Are you going to go out and buy a missile? No. Why are they advertising? Why are they going to MSNBC and running all those ads? For access, so nobody will talk about the kind of thing we're going to talk about right now. Pick the story up.
Yeah, this is truly terrifying to think about. But as you said, 46 bombs per day over the last 20 years. And of course, a lot of that happened, in the Iraq War and Afghanistan. But it hasn't ended, right? We're not at the point where we're not dropping any bombs per day now.
Right.
Bombs get dropped by the United States every single day, not just on average, but every day we're bombing somebody somewhere for whatever reason they've come up with that day.
Okay, well, what I think is important about this is this report that is supposed to come out regularly. This is supposed to be a regular report, has been stifled, for 21 months?
Yeah.
Now, who's been in charge for the last 12 months at least? Who is in charge? It's the Democrats and it's the Republicans. They know how important this report is, because it gives us an insight into how big our weapons industry has become. Weapons industry in the United States probably is the number one most profitable industry in the United States, besides pharmaceuticals. And so right now, we start seeing, it's important that we know that 337,000 bombs and missiles have been released in everywhere from Syria to Yemen, you name it, we've dropped them, nobody's paid attention to. We've dropped them out of drones. But the point to this story, where I landed with this story, is it's been a big secret. And it wasn't just the Republicans, it was the Democrats that kept it a big secret. We're under a siege warfare mentality. And we're doing it not for national security all the time, but because the weapons industry has such a huge impact on what our politicians do.
And this chart here, which I love, that came with this story, you know, as I mentioned, obviously we had Iraq, we have Syria, we have Afghanistan and Yemen, which, you know, totally unjustifiable for what we're doing over there. But there's also this number right here at the bottom, 28,217 bombs dropped in other countries. So not Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, or Yemen.
What are the other countries?
Wars, exactly. Where are these bombs being dropped?
This is America's, we are now the premier weapons maker in the world, and it's our economy.
Yep.
This is Boeing economy. This is Raytheon economy. And to hell with how many bombs we drop, to hell with whether or not it creates new Cold Wars with places like Russia and China. We have a weapons industry completely unregulated. There's nobody controlling that throttle. This air power, it's called the Air Power Summaries. That's the report. That's the report that all this is taken from. That's the report that was been suppressed by two administrations.
And it's supposed to come out every month. We're supposed to see how many bombs are being dropped. But look, you point out this should be the national symbol of the United States. It's not a bald eagle. It's this missile right here.
Yeah. Classified documents found at Biden's home and former office have created a major headache for this administration. I got to tell you something. There's no way to follow this story and be honest with ourselves. Okay, if we're really going to put all our tribalness aside and be honest with ourselves, there's no way he didn't know all this, okay? But I think there's another story here. The story is, I believe, that this is the Democratic Party getting rid of a problem. The elite in the Democratic Party don't want him to run again. The old Obama administration, all those folks that are working with his administration right now, they're doing everything they can to dismantle his hopes for a presidential run. How elegant is that? To create the issue themselves and say, this guy, first of all, there's more to the stories. Does it tie into Hunter Biden? Does it tie into the relationship with China and the relationship with Ukraine? These stories are being leaked out there by his own administration.
See, what gets me about this is you had Biden who at this time, like his approval rating is bouncing back. The guy's doing good on paper. Everybody's starting to say, hey, we see all this dysfunction in the Republicans, all the corruption. You're looking pretty good. And then boom, this story drops right as he finally starts to gain his footing after 2 years. So yeah, the timing of it is very weird, especially now that we've learned this week, the media did have this story a couple months ago.
Yes, they did.
So why just now? Why as soon as Biden's doing better, does it come out now? Because the documents were found when? October?
Yes.
Was when they actually found them?
Yes.
It was not,
They found
yesterday.
some in October, and then they found some in November.
Right.
2 different times. The media doesn't do anything with it. MSNBC, who is just the voice of the Democratic Party, CNN, who now is trying to run away from being the voice of the Democratic Party, they've had all this. More importantly, that thing that we keep hearing, the deep state, FBI knew about it, CIA knew about it, government knew about it, they kept it quiet. Garland knew about it, he kept it quiet. And so now all of a sudden, he says, he's stumbling around on stage saying, I might run again. Well, this is gonna put a damper on that, isn't it?
Well, it really is. And listen, I personally, I don't think he did anything malicious here. I don't think that he's taking the stuff and wanting to do bad things with it. And it's important to remember that the whole reason Trump even got in trouble was because the National Archives worked with him or tried to work with him for a year to just get the documents back. We don't want to send the FBI. we don't want to call the DOJ. Would you just give us our stuff back?
That's true.
And
That
when
is
his
true.
lawyers lied to them in that sworn affidavit saying you've got everything, that's what really tipped the scales the other way. And honestly, I'm glad that they have put a special prosecutor on the Biden case now, because I think at least it shows you that, listen, we're doing it to him. We're going to do it to him too.
The stories that are being leaked, I mean, these stories are being leaked, Farron. The stories about the question, well, some of those documents had to do with Ukraine. Some of them had to do with China. Were they put back here in this box to protect little boy Hunter? I mean, that stuff is out there right now. It's not just we found the documents. They're taking this and they're putting it on steroids. It's not just the Republicans. I mean, the Republicans, this is like, this is like a heyday. Talk about Trump getting a pass. You talk about Trump getting a pass on this whole document scene, this does it. But I think the real story that everybody's missing here is his own people are trying to get rid of the old guy. They don't want him to run again. They're afraid of him running again.
I'd be afraid of, well, I am afraid of him running again too. Just, you look at the polls, he doesn't have a chance. So, I don't know if the Democrats are competent enough to pull off something like that, but it looks bad. It looks real bad, though.
It does. The other thing is, you and I have done this story on, when Biden came onto the scene, I'm going to run for president, Obama was not big on that. Do you recall that? They'd say, well, why won't Obama come out and say, yeah, this is my guy? Well, all of Obama's folks moved right over to the Biden administration. Yeah. And now the question is are they the ones that are saying, hey, this is a big opportunity to get rid of the old guy? I don't know who they replace him with. I don't know. You take him out of the picture. I don't know who they run. You had Schiff. I thought this was that little oddball Schiff. Schiff is talking about, he's running for Senate, running for president. Yeah. Schiff even comes out and says, this has been a big, big problem with national security. I mean, really? And so all of a sudden you start putting these parts together and you say, this is an interesting story. A new study confirmed that those Russian bots from 2016 election, they had no impact on the election at all. Now, look, I don't care how many times we say this. We're going to do this show and we're going to get all these commenters about, I don't care if you prove it to them. These folks proved it to them that they said, look, this is ridiculous. There is no connection here. This was a study that was done by New York University, liberal university. Liberals did this study, and they come out and say what?
The amount of people who even saw these things that these bots were putting out was so small that there is no way, they said it was statistically insignificant, that it would have had any impact at all on the 2016 election. And just to your point about, this New York University, the center that put this together, we've interviewed people from there on Ring of Fire over the years multiple times.
They're great. It's a great source of information. They're progressive. They call it like they see it. It's like The Intercept, isn't it?
And they also say, listen, nobody's saying the bots didn't exist. The bots were real. Russia did do this, but they were so pathetic and incompetent with it that it had no bearing on the election. It served less than 1% of the population on those outlets, and it was only targeted towards people who were already going to vote for Trump anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so where does all this land? Okay, first of all, this was a great opportunity for Hillary to say, I didn't lose because I was a bad candidate. I lost because Russia spent $175,000 on bad media for us. Okay, Podesta, that idiot who was her campaign manager in Moak, they said, we finally have a reason that we can explain why we lost to this nincompoop, Trump. How in the world do you lose to Trump? They had to have a reason. This was it. Media, Rachel Maddow used to do, we had a show together on Air America. Yeah. I have huge respect for her. She's a brilliant woman. But she bought into this hook, line, and sinker. Her producers, the people that were doing her research for every day, it was like there was a Russian behind every tree. The Russians were coming to overtake us. The bots are here. Democracy can't live. And I'm watching Rachel. I'm going, what the hell? You know better than this. She's a Rhodes Scholar. She knew this was nonsense. But MSNBC, CNN bought into it really in a big way because it's a good story. Everybody's afraid of the Russians coming. But we saw this hysteria develop that ultimately ended up into a Cold War with Russia. I mean, it's de facto Cold War.
Yeah.
When you have CNN and MSNBC every night saying the Russians caused such panic that Hillary lost.
And you know, when you look at Trump out there still saying, oh, the 2020 election was stolen, and we all laugh at that and mock it. No, it wasn't. You're a sore loser.
Yeah,
it's no different than what they were saying after
Exactly.
2016, and we have to treat it
The same way.
Exactly.
We have to, exactly, when these idiot Republicans talk about stolen elections, we have to say, you know, you're an idiot. There's no sign that it was stolen. You have to do the same thing here, especially when you have the empirical data that shows it. We're still going to have people that will be commenting on this show. They can't help themselves. They're single-minded. They don't want to open their mind to anything else except what they've been told again and again. It's like a child that's told that Santa Claus is real. At what point do you say, you know, you're 17 years old? Santa might not be real. Anyway, I loved Mark Warner's, Mark Warner was all over the media when all this has happened. This is a full-blown national security risk. We have to do something. The Russians are coming. Mark Warner, Democrat.
Yeah. $175,000.
Yeah.
And that's enough to throw
and
the
it
whole
cost
election.
Hillary the election.
Yeah.
She lost because she was a bad candidate. She
Exactly.
lost because she had bad handlers. She lost to a total idiot, Trump. And in that loss created the worst division and the worst political dysfunction this country's ever seen because she let that guy into the presidential office. Exxon's internal documents are being made public showing how the company spent 50 years lying about climate change. You know, I say this to you. I say this often, and I really mean this. I really do believe, I've told you this to your face, I tell everybody, I think you're the best progressive commentator in the business. I sincerely mean that, okay? Not just because I've worked with you for 20 years. I believe you're the best. You have covered this story better than anybody I know. Why don't you take this story, top to bottom?
What's happened now is we've got a whole new treasure trove of Exxon documents that have been digitized and provided online for the first time. So you've got researchers that are finally digging into this, and what they found was that in the 1970s, mid-1970s, the best climate change research linking fossil fuels to global warming was coming out of Exxon itself. But of course, they knew that, we're about to show the world that we did this, we're doing this. So they buried it and instead did the exact opposite. They put all of their resources into convincing the public that climate change wasn't real, that we're in a period of global cooling, funding all of these think tanks that soon, grew into these behemoths in DC, they still are, all because they found out the truth and they couldn't let anybody know about it. But their research was even better than the scientists and what Congress had at the time.
Will anybody watch this segment that we're doing here right now?
Maybe.
What happens when we do a climate change segment?
It is a traffic killer.
It will destroy traffic. People don't want to hear it. They don't want to talk about it. Why is that? Does it scare them? Is it they feel like they can't do anything? Why is it that when you, and I always go to you on climate change, I think you're just the guy to be talking. Why is it that it shuts down traffic?
I really can't figure it out. I mean, it's obviously a hugely important issue to the future of the planet and people themselves, but they just don't want to think that, one, that they can do anything about it, so I'm not going to look at it, we're screwed either way, or the people who think, you know what, it's probably not as bad as all of the science tells us it's going to be, so I'm not going to pay attention.
Or you know what, we don't believe the media.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. Donald Trump is weaker than ever, and that might work against the Democrats in the next election. This is well done. This story to me, Brookings Institute, which of course is typically aren't the kind of right wing. I mean, they
got a lot of liberal stuff that comes out of
they
them.
swing both ways. Maybe I think that's a good thing.
Militant,
too.
I think, is a good word too.
Militant. Very militant. No, I think it's a good thing. Their take on this was interesting. Trump is a gift to the Democrats. He's a gift because he sucks up all the attention. He's the guy who's the whipping boy. Democrat can go on the air. They can talk about Trump all day long, and everybody ignores what's going on with the Democrats. Second thing is, according to this, it prevents there being any normalcy. He prevents any normalcy returning to the Republican Party, okay? Pick it up from there if you would.
Yeah, it's nothing but chaos with Donald Trump, and chaos in a Republican Party benefits the Democrats because they get to sit there and point out, look at how dysfunctional they are. Look at the crazy thing this man said on Twitter. Look at what he's posting over here. He did a ridiculous interview because he's crazy. And that, of course, as you said, helps Democrats. The people Trump endorsed in the midterms.
Now, let's spend some time with that.
Yeah.
That's an important part of this story, right?
Yeah, it is.
Pick it up.
Because he picked people that are a lot like him.
Right.
Carrie Lake, Doug Mastriano, Dr. Oz, Herschel Walker.
Yeah.
All of those people were Trump's hand-picked people, and every one of them got embarrassed. In fact, of all the people Trump endorsed that were not incumbents and not running unopposed, only one of them won, and that was J.D. Vance in Ohio. And so and J.D. Vance was, he plays both sides of being a MAGA guy and a normal Republican pretty well, and that's what helped him.
Okay, well, I think there's another part to it. Okay, let's look at the other side of it. Sununu, okay? Sununu, governor, running for governor, he says, look, I don't want anything to do with this guy. I think he's a nutcase. I'm appalled at what he did with January 6th. He distances himself from it totally. He wins. Just huge. Wins in the primary and wins huge in the general election. Kemp in Ohio. Now,
Georgia.
Excuse me, Kemp in Georgia. So Kemp says he's a nutcase. I don't want anything to do with him. Distances himself from Trump, wins in the primaries, and beats Stacey Abrams in the general election. So the point of this story that was done is this guy's been a gift. He's been an absolute gift to the Democrats. Now he's so weak. He's so weak. There's no way he's going to make it again. Who's going to fill up that space? We've talked about that. I don't want to take any time on this segment. We have ideas about it. But the point being, as he leaves, we're going to see Republicans moving back to normal. They're going to scream back to normal. And they stand a better chance in winning when they move back to normal.
Exactly, and that's why the author here, a woman by the name of Elaine Kamarck, who, I don't know if that name stuck out to you, many years ago we interviewed her on Ring of Fire. Another frequent Ring of Fire
We've been
guest.
doing this a long time.
We really have. But
I've gotten gray hair since we've been doing this.
But she points out that, listen, when the Republicans go back to normal and they're not seen as overtly crazy anymore, voters can't really distinguish between the two. It's like, okay, you stand for this and you stand for this. None of y'all are just bat crap crazy.
Did you see the edge of that, though? They said when the Republicans return to normal, then the focus gets to the Democrats on that, what they consider the crazy edge.
Yeah.
The crazy edge of the Democrats. And that hurts the Democrats.
Yep.
Farron, as usual, thanks for doing the show. A lot of great stories.
Thank you.
That's all for this week, but all of these segments are going to be available this coming week right here on this channel. You can follow us on Twitter at America's Lawyer. I'm Mike Papantonio, and this has been America's Lawyer, where we tell you the stories every week that corporate media won't tell because their advertisers don't let them and because their political contacts are so close that doesn't allow for these stories to be told. We'll see you next week.